Hey everyone, it's David Sirota. So how many times have I said follow the money? And when I say follow the money, I mean really follow it, not just to political candidates themselves, but also to outside groups that support those candidates. It's really an important lesson in this era when you have more and more of these outside groups that are effectively financing political campaigns. We have a big story today at International Business Times in conjunction with the campaign finance watchdog group MapLight. It's about New Mexico, but it's also about a much bigger situation even than what happened in New Mexico. It's about how investment deals at the state level, at pension funds and endowment funds, how these huge investment contracts are oftentimes going to politically connected Wall Street firms, despite the fact that there are federal rules designed to prevent these very, very lucrative contracts from going to campaign donors. Back in 2010, with pension fund scandals swirling all across the country, including in New Mexico, the SEC passed its so-called pay-to-play rule. This rule was designed to try to prevent campaign contributions from influencing who gets awarded the contracts to invest public pension money and the like. And these are huge contracts. These are not your little $1 million, $2 million contracts. These are contracts to manage hundreds of millions of dollars. These are the biggest kinds of contracts that are out there at the state and local level because they involve so much money. And so the SEC basically said, we're creating a rule designed to prevent Wall Street firms that donate to public officials who have control over these investments. We're trying to prevent those investment contracts from being awarded to firms that whose executives give big money to the public officials. The idea being that we don't want there to be a relationship between who gets the contracts to manage retirees' money and campaign contributions. They wanted the awarding of investment contracts to be made on merit because they're contracts to manage other people's savings. There's a fiduciary responsibility there. And so the SEC said these contracts need to be awarded on the basis of merit. What are going to deliver the best returns for retirees and taxpayers, not based on who's given a campaign contribution. Well, here's what happened in New Mexico. And this has happened previously in places like New Jersey. We tracked a situation in which politically connected Wall Street donors got a huge amount of investments from the state of New Mexico under Republican Governor Susana Martinez. Here are the stats. Two state funds managing $33 billion have shifted more money into higher risk investments, resulting for the state in below average returns, but generating in just 4 years $729 million worth of fees. Okay, so you get how lucrative these investment management deals are. Now, amid that shift, New Mexico committed at least $757 million to 8 financial firms whose donors, who are linked to donors who have given, in total, more than $1.2 million to groups that have been supporting Governor Susana Martinez. Now this, again, this kind of thing happened in New Jersey, where Governor Chris Christie's administration was awarding investment deals to firms who had been giving money to various Christie-linked groups. In New Mexico, some of this money from the executives at these investment firms that got contracts. Some of the money went directly to Martinez. Some of it went to super PACs that she is linked to. But here's the other part. A lot of it went through these quote-unquote outside groups like the Republican Governors Association, which then gets the money and then spends money back in New Mexico. So what's going on here in part is that the money from investment managers is flowing through the Republican Governors Association, and then the Republican Governors Association is spending money in the state to support the very officials that the money is not supposed to be going to. Now, the RGA, the Republican Governors Association, has basically said, this is not a pass-through. We're not essentially laundering or funneling the money around the SEC's pay-to-play rule. They say, look, we're an independent group. Yeah, we've donated to Susana Martinez. Yeah, we spend in support of Republican governors, including the governor of New Mexico. But donors can't earmark the money. An individual donor can't say, here's my money, RGA, and you have to spend it on this race. And so they argue that because the money isn't earmarked, it's totally fine. But the SEC's pay-to-play rule included provisions in it to say that investment managers can't route money through third parties. These are these so-called anti-circumvention clauses. And so the SEC is really on the spot now, because this has been happening all over the country, including in New Mexico, where investment managers now know they can't, they have problems donating directly to candidates, and so the money is going to the RGA, which is then spending on those candidates who can influence state investment decisions. And the SEC to date has opted not to try to regulate that, even though the SEC's rule, says specifically that this kind of thing could trigger the pay-to-play prohibitions. Now, it's important to remember the historical context of New Mexico as well. New Mexico has been facing all sorts of pay-to-play scandals. Susana Martinez, the Republican governor, in fact, was elected promising to clean up that kind of pay-to-play culture. Here's what she said in her first State of the State address. It's an incredible quote. She said, quote, "Corruption is a crime, not an ethical dilemma. Those guilty of corruption are criminals and they should be treated as such. First, we must institute criminal penalties for public officials who know about but fail to report pay-to-play activities. Public officials do not have the luxury of turning a blind eye." But it seems that Susana Martinez herself has turned a blind eye to the ethical standards that she herself has set up. I mean, these are huge contracts to invest retirees' money that have been flowing to firms who are linked to donors who have pumped a huge amount of cash into the groups that support Susana Martinez at a time when she has influence over those state investment decisions. She appoints members to the one pension board. She chairs the State Investment Council. This is happening not only in New Mexico, but all over the country. And I want to reiterate this, that these are enormous amounts of money. These are not small contracts. A lot of people don't pay attention to what goes on at the state and municipal level in terms of contracts, and everybody focuses on Congress and allegations of corruption in Congress. But you know who focuses on state and local politics? Wall Street focuses on state and local politics, because those huge piles of money, those pension systems, state investment funds, endowment funds, they represent absolutely enormous sums of money. Enormous sums of money that Wall Street firms can earn huge fees off of. And this story, in terms of following the money, to really follow the money, you now have to follow the money, not just campaign contributions that go directly to candidates, but always follow that money, as it is now going to this proliferation of groups that are not the candidates' committees, but are linked to and support those candidates, and oftentimes have much fewer restrictions on how much money they can accept.